Hello, my name's Katherine. Welcome to my kitchen. Now, I'm not used to doing this online teaching. I do a lot of teaching face-to-face and in workshops, but it's not often I have to teach, as I said, from my kitchen into a computer, so bear with me. Today we're going to have a look at an embroidery technique called Crewelwork, which has been around a very long time. One of the earliest examples of Crewelwork is actually the Bear Tapestry, which, confusingly enough, is not a tapestry at all, it's an embroidery. And the stitches that were used on there are used in Crewelwork. So it's one of the earliest pieces that we know. Crewelwork is also called Jacobean work. It was very popular during the reigns of the Stuarts, two of whom were named James, Jacobean, and so forth. During Stuart times, Tudor times, it decorated clothing, then it fell out of fashion, then it came back again and started being used for more things like furnishings. So bed hangings, cushions, things like that. An example of some Crewelwork is a piece like this. Yeah, turn to the light. Based on nature. Most Crewelwork designs use either what we call tree of life or leaf motifs, animal motifs, things like that. So a piece like this, very much so. Modern Crewelwork can turn away from it. I've done pieces using motifs like dragons as opposed to a more traditional one. As I said, used on furnishings, like these. It's a really nice technique to use. It's quite versatile. You can use lots of stitches, you can put lots of colour into it, so it's a fun piece to use. And you don't have to stick to the traditional methods. One lady whose books I've been using, Hazel Blomkamp, she has come up with some really nice ideas with a modern twist. If you want to be really traditional, stick with tried and tested. Royal School of Needlework. This book goes through a lot of Crewelwork techniques. It's very good. It's also where I learned to do it. So, to work Crewelwork, materials. It's traditionally worked on linen twill. Linen twill is a nice strong fabric. It's got a tight weave on it. It can take lots of stitching. You need a fabric like that. You need a strong fabric that can take lots of needle in the same place. Yeah. So a strong cotton if you can't get hold of linen twill. You can work on silk dupion as well. Use silks onto the silk and that will work. As long as it's got a nice close weave and it's a strong material, you should be able to do it. Threads, traditionally wool. So Appleton's threads, 2-ply, available fairly easily on the internet. My stockist is a lady who runs a company called Spinning Jenny, and I will make those details available to you later. I'll talk about that afterwards. But Appleton's threads, there's a really good range of colours. Most 2-ply wools though will work. This one is slightly different. It came from a company called the Mulberry Dyer, and she dyes threads in the traditional way and traditional colours. So you can get colours that came from the Bear Tapestry, colours that came from Jacobean times, from the 16th century, depending on what you want to do. I also work as a historian. So I'm going to show you some stitches for a panel like this, which I used as an introduction to Crewelwork as one of my workshops that I would teach face to face. There's a variety of stitches on here. It's worked on the linen twill. It's only a small piece, so it will fit comfortably in a ring. You need a frame. You can't do Crewelwork without a frame, I'm afraid. It really just doesn't work because the stitches pull and the fabric puckers, and you need a frame. A small piece like this will fit in a hoop. This is an 8-inch hoop. If you're doing a bigger piece, you will need a square set frame that you can really pull, and you always need to pull the fabric really taut on it. This as tight as you can get it. Yeah, keep that pin as tight as you can. Every now and again, check your tension of your fabric. Keep it as tight as you can. To transfer the design, as we are in slightly straightened circumstances, I used good old-fashioned light box. I put my design onto a piece of paper, pinned it to the window and held the fabric over the top and let the light come through and drew it on with a pencil. If you have the opportunity to use dressmaker's carbon paper, you can use that. The traditional method is what we call prick and pounce, which is a piece of tissue paper with the pattern, the design on it, over the top of the fabric, make lots of little holes, fill the holes with chalk and then paint the design onto your fabric. But as I said, straitened circumstances that we're living in at the moment, put it on the window. Light box, something like that. So, a variety of stitches on here. We have satin stitch, long and short stitch, seeding, stem stitch. These are what we call spider's webs. You see those? Yeah. This is a bit of fly stitch, chain stitch, all quite simple stitches, but once you put them together and start adding the different colours, you can make it look amazing. I'm going to show you some of these stitches and then hopefully you'll be able to have a go. I will also leave contact details and I have a Facebook page and an email address, so if you wanted to contact me afterwards you can about anything, and I can help with suppliers, or I do have some limited stocks. I can send things out as a small kit to you. Now let's start with the stitching. That's the bit we want to get down to. This design, this leaf is going to be worked in long and short stitch. Before you actually start stitching with long and short stitch, you need to put a split stitch outline on it. You're then going to stitch over the split stitch and it lifts the leaf, takes it up off the fabric a little bit, gives you a nice sharp finish around the edge as well. So, split stitch is exactly what it says. You put the stitch, you stitch a stitch and then you come up into it, so you split the stitch. So I'll show you what I mean, bear with me. So put your needle down, slide it through, and then come up into the stitch, so you've split it. Bring it down. Keep your stitches small. If you start making them too big, you will lose the preciseness of the design. If you're doing a tight corner, then bring your needle further back into the previous stitch. If you're doing a long straight bit, it's not a problem, just keep going. Just make sure you split your stitch and go down and take it round. This is not easy to do upside down. Come on, that's it. Split the stitch, take it round the curve. I hope you can see what I'm doing there. Okay, and bring it down. So you've got your outline. Once you've got your outline, you're going to start working on it. Now, a long and short stitch, you will start down here and work towards the growing point. Always remember that. If you're doing something like this, work towards your growing point. So I'm going to change my needle. And I am deliberately going to work with a different colour to the split stitch so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, if you were doing this, you want the same colour. So, long and short stitch. Bring it through, take it down, tuck it in. When it says long and short stitch, don't make your stitches too short though. Long and longer works better. Okay. Keep them packed quite closely together. can't really see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, and then work, once you've got your first initial stitches, work one side and then the other. Because you want to take this out, and there's a long stitch, short stitch. Start to slightly angle your stitches. See how I've got the different lengths, a long stitch and a short stitch. So to work the second layer, this time you're going to come up into your first layer, pull it through, do yourself a stitch that goes out. Follow the angles from the first layer that you did, again making your stitches long and short, and bringing them up out of the dark colour and going upwards towards the growing point. Always work towards your growing point. Again, if you need to, fill a stitch in like that. And keep coming round as you did with the first piece. So to work the leaf, you would stitch this side, then that side in your dark colour, then this side and that side in your second colour, and then again use your third colour to give yourself a shaded leaf. If I show you the original piece, if you can see the shading on that leaf here, you can see how we've got 1, 2, 3 working upwards. Yep. And then add your leaf lines on top, just stem stitch over the top of them. Stem stitch is the next stitch that I'm going to show you. So this little leaf here is worked with a stem stitch outline and then seeding in the middle. So stem stitch, very simple. Do a stitch, don't bring it all the way through. Bring your needle up halfway between on the inside. If you're doing stem stitch, your needle comes up on the inside of the stitch. If you're doing outline stitch, your needle will come up on the outside of the stitch. Very simple way of remembering. In for stem, out for outline. And you just bring it up, pull it through. If you're doing a curve, make your stitch smaller and bring your needle up close to the last stitch that you did. So bring it down there. Make sure you've got a little loop. Bring your needle up through. This is where working on a stand is very useful because it gives you a hand free. Bring it round. Change the angle so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. Bring that through there. So this is not splitting the stitch like the split stitch did. This is coming up there so the stitches lie on top of each. Well, not sort of on top of each other, but linked into each other in a way. So up there, bring this through. Bring it down. Again, you're doing a stem stitch, so you want the needle on the inside of the stitch as it comes through. And it comes all the way around. Outside of your leaf. So when you come down to the point, make your stitches really small. So that you can get into the point, and take your needle back right up against the previous stitch. Bring it down slightly below the point, so when you bring the next one up, you're going to have a nice tight point. Like so. So, seeding stitch. Very, very simple. Just 2 small seed-like stitches at random. You can mix your colours, you can have it all one colour, you can shade, so you have dark colours at the top, blending down into lighter colours. Just make sure your stitches are random and even. Keep them the same size all the time. And just keep filling the space however you choose to. As I said, you can use different colours. You could do it all the same colour as I'm doing here. You could start with one shade of colour, blend down into another, gradually mixing them. Lots of different ways of using seeding. It's a really, really useful filling stitch. Just keep your stitches even sizes and fill the shape. So again, if I show you the original version, here you can see I've used, where are we? Yep, different colours in that one. There's light green, dark green, and I put a little stem stitch leaf line into it as well. Yeah. So the next piece we're going to do is the trellis stitch. Now trellis is another good filling stitch. Here we are, this is trellis stitch here. You can do a lot of variations with it. It will fill big pieces, small pieces. It's very useful. Again, you can mix colours with it. You can make it quite decorative. This is a very simple one, just laid bars in one direction, then a second direction with a little securing stitch on top. You can fill the gaps, you can put little daisies in there, you can put French knots in there, you can group them, you can scatter them, you can do all sorts with it. Always lay your bars first, then put your securing stitches, then put your infill, and then outline it. Yeah. Your outlining goes on at the end because it hides your edges, but you don't have to tuck the ends of the bars on your trellis into the outlining, so the outlining goes on last. Now, on my piece where I'm stitching, I've filled one half of the shape, and we're going to fill the second half. You do one half, cut your thread up again, and start the second half every time. Okay? It helps to keep your angles right. So I'm here, and I'm going to go across there. Keep your spacing even. Up here, goes across there. Make sure it's nice and even. Up here, can hold it on to keep it straight. Yeah. Goes across, and keep working it until you've filled the whole piece that you want. But always work it in 2 halves, otherwise you might find you lose your angle as you're working towards the end. Okay. So now we're ready to put the second layer of stitches that are going to go in the opposite direction. Again, start in the middle and take it across. Keep your spacings even. And you can see how you build up your trellis work. Do one half first, and then the second half. That is not even. I'll take that one out. Bear with me. Carry on. Just a couple back there actually. That on the line. That's it. Take it across. You want your trellis to fill all the design so it goes right to the very end. And that's one half done, then we fill the second half. So tie it off, whatever your preferred method is. Rethread your needle and go again. Now I often get asked how long should your length of thread be. So first find the end of your thread. Hold it in your fingers, take it down to your elbow. That's how long you want it. When you're using wools, if you have too long a length, you will gradually wear the wool and it becomes very hard to use, or it gets knots, or worse, it frays and breaks. So the best is to hold it between your finger and thumb, take it down to your elbow and cut. That will be the right length. Very easy way of measuring it. You don't have to be too precise. And as one lady once said to me, we're no longer living in the Victorian age, so if you want to put a knot in your thread, put a knot in it. Okay, so then you're ready to start your second let. And again, because you're working the second half, you've got your angle already nice and easy to follow. And fill the second side. You've got all your trellis lines in, now you're going to put a little securing stitch, and that is quite simply stitch. Now you can do a single stitch going horizontally or vertically over an intersection, or you could make it a little cross stitch. So you do one horizontal and one vertical, but each one goes over an intersection. And keep it as small as you can and as tight to the intersection as you can without actually distorting the threads, because you still want to keep that nice straight line. And just fill every intersection with a little securing stitch. I've chosen to do a contrasting colour. You could choose the same colour if you wanted to. If you want to fill in your gaps with a little motif like a French knot or a lazy daisy, something like that, you can as well. And that's your trellis work. Then I would do a stem stitch along this line here. And this here is going to be satin stitch. We work the satin stitch and then we'll put a line in there as well. Okay, so satin stitch is next. So to do your satin stitch, as with your long and short, you need a split stitch, edge first to stitch over the top of. Then satin stitch, again, start in the middle so you get your angle. If you want to, draw yourself some angle lines on there to help you keep your angle. Then bring your needle up. Where am I? and take it straight across and tuck it under. Bring it back over, take it up, tuck it in, and just keep going like that. Very, very simple stitch. Keep it even. Try not to pull too tightly. Might be setting sin. I do a lot of things far too tightly. Up and down there. Don't be tempted to save thread and go across and down and across and down. That will not give the desired effect. Satin stitch, you want it to look at the same on both sides. So if you flip it over, it's the same as it is on that side. Yep. And just keep your angle and fill the space. You work one half, cut your thread, rethread your needle, do the second half. Start from the middle both times. Just keep filling it in. And then you fill that half, then you fill that half, job done. Then you can put your stem stitch in here, stem stitch around there, and that leaf will be finished. Okay, so we're nearly there, folks. We're getting there. This leaf here is edged in chain stitch. Again, once you get the hang of it, very simple stitch. Come up, go down in exactly the same place as you came up. Take your thread down. Now, give yourself a little loop. Your needle's going to come up like that. And put the loop, again this is where having a stand is very handy, over the top there, pull it through. That is the first link of the chain. Next stitch, you go down where you came up inside the loop. Okay, go down, bring your needle up, pull it round. That's link 2 of your chain. Down there. Bring it up. Again, keep your stitches even. Each link is the same size. And you see how the thread is inside the loop? Pull it through. Your needle goes down inside that loop. Yep. Pull it through. Bring it up. Keep going along. Down inside the loop. Pull it through. Go around the little points. Go into the point. Bring it up. Then when you come out of the point, change the direction of the loop. Okay. You keep working. Excuse me. And keep working round. If you haven't got a stand, lean it against yourself as you work, because then you've got a hand free to hold the loop as you're stitching. You can see how I'm doing this. I hold the hoop against my body and I use one hand to hold the thread as a loop constantly and the other hand to work the needle. Going down into the loop, up onto the line, down into the loop Now chain stitch is a very useful stitch. You can use chain stitch as an outline stitch, as I am here. You can also use it to fill. You can do big loops, small loops. You can have double chain stitch where you have more than one thread in your needle at a time. There's lots of different variations of it. It is a very useful stitch, very interesting stitch to use. It can give you lots of texture as well. So, different ways of continuing a thread. When you come to the end of your thread, simply make a loop like that. Yeah. Now I'm going to do this with two different colours to show you exactly what I mean. So I've got the thread that I've been using and I'm coming to the end of. I've made my loop. I've got a new piece of thread that is going to come up, and the loop from the old thread goes over the top of it. I pull my new thread through. I pull the loop from my old thread, turn over and tie that in. That can then be cut and go away. And I carry on stitching with my new one in exactly the same way. So it goes down, makes a loop, comes up, and you carry on with your chain stitch. Yes, you will feel like you need a million hands, but actually it's a lot easier than it looks once you've had a few goes. So you'd fill in the whole line. When you come to the end of your thread, the end of the piece that you want to cover, simply, can you see if I do a stitch, bring it over the loop, then instead of going down into the stitch, come here, the outside, and pull it down, and then tie it off. Okay? Now, almost the last stitch. This here is what we call fly stitch. Now it is actually, although I've done it as a continuous line, it is actually worked as each individual little motif. So I'm going to show you how that works. Fly stitch. I'm going to start here. I come up. Can you see the central line? I come up on the left of it. I go down to the right of it. Again, hold your thread into a loop. Bring the needle up on the central line and make a little Y. That stitch then goes down. That's your first one. Again, bring it up on the left, take it down on the right, bring your needle up. Because I want a continuous line, I'm going to bring my needle up there, bring it down on the line. So, up on the left, down on the right, bring your needle up at the end of the previous stitch, still on the central line, pull it through, take it down on the central line. I'm going to start spreading them out a little bit more now. Up on the left, down on the right, come up at the end of the previous stitch, if you can see it, and bring it down. Up at the end of the previous stitch, make your Y shape, take it down, and keep working like that until you've gone all the way along the line. You can make it gradually bigger as you've got the more space to fill. Then as you're coming towards the end, and bringing that down there, start making your stitches smaller again. Down on the right. As long as you keep this central stitch on the central line, you will get the twist of this leaf line. I also have these two books which I recommend for you. Crewelwork Stitches. This one, I've had it for years and years. It's a lovely little book, and inside not only does it show you how to do the stitch, it shows you ideas for using it. My other stitch book, which I find invaluable, is that. This is another one I've had for years. It goes, if the stitch doesn't exist, it's not in here. You know, it's with one of those. It's got everything in it. It's really good. So there's a couple more books for you. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you understood it. Please bear with the fact this is the first time I've ever done anything online, and it's been quite nerve-wracking. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoyed it. Goodbye.